everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Kevy's Corner. I'm Kevykev. Glad to have you with us. And as always, we are so excited about our guest today. This young lady, I tell you, she has done some tremendous things in the art of poetry, has a new book out. It is called Dare to Change, and she's going to tell us about some of the changes that she's made in Dares, and she has published a total of 18 books. She's published 18 books, 13 books on poetry, and she also has done 5 children's stories. So please welcome to the show. We're so happy to have with us today Miss Jacqueline James. Jacqueline, how are you?
Good evening, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure.
Hi, everyone. I'm grateful to be on the show. Yes.
Well, it is an honor to have you on. I mean, we were just been looking at your website and your books, and you know, the first question I have to ask is, how did you become a poet? How did you get started?
You know what? I'm glad you asked me that because it kind of chose me.
Okay.
Yes. So it actually started, my love for poetry started very young, when I was in the 3rd grade. So I was really mainly inspired by the rhythm stanza of the poetry. Right? I love Dr. Seuss and the way he can just put words together and make them rhyme and make people smile, you know? They gave me my first inspiration, and then went on to Langston Hughes, learning a little bit more about a different side of poetry, okay? I can just kind of connect with people through his poetry. Then, of course, my famous poet, Maya Angelou. Oh yes.
Oh, my God.
The way she could take pain and bring it to a surface, I just admired that. But she kept on perseverance, and she's still to this day is my idol. I idolize her. And so I just kind of was turned on at a very young age, but unfortunately, that was not a thing in the 70s. Poetry was not a thing to a point to choose as a career. You know, so I didn't have anyone to kind of nurture it, so it lay dormant for years.
Oh. So of course, the next question is going to be, so what happened? What was that light bulb moment that did turn it on for you to say, you told us you had this love, but obviously something happened and say, you know what, I can do this.
Wow, Kevin, you are not going to believe this. This was simply extraordinary. This moment right here, I actually had a toothache, right? I had a toothache one morning, and I was on my way to the dentist's office. Before I got there, I thought I had a stroke because the infection was moving up quickly from my jaw to my face, and then everything had swollen so bad. And when I got in the dentist's office, he looked at me, he said, "No, what hospital would you like to be in?" I'm like, huh? So I ended up going to the hospital. They admitted me on the dentist's, orders. And while everyone was praying for my recovery, I was writing poetry. I know, I was actually in the hospital for 3 nights and 4 days. And I had written enough poetry from my phone, laying in the bed.
Wow.
Filled with morphine on one IV and antibiotics on the other IV. And I was writing poetry. And when I got discharged, I couldn't stop speaking in rhymes. My children thought it was the morphine. Well, to tell you the truth, so did I at first. But 8 years later and 4,000 poems later, that morphine is still kicking. That was some strong morphine.
Yeah, strong morphine, no question about it. And you talked about that. You really got started in 2018.
Yes.
When you published your first book, and then during the pandemic, though, you published 10 books during when we were all locked down. How did you do that?
Because the books was already written, and I just simply had to publish them. Actually, the first 17 books was written in 2017. They were just waiting to be published, like the domino effect. Right, so prior to the pandemic, I had 4 books on the shelf. And we went into the pandemic, I had to naturally stop working where I was at, and I was at home. So I had no other choice but to embrace that and just run with it. And it was the best decision I've ever made. I couldn't be more happier.
Obviously. And again, you do children's stories. So obviously you have an affection, you have a big passion to want to educate and inform our children, our youngsters.
Yes, and the majority of the children's stories still comes out in a jingle.
Okay.
Like my ABC book. A is for apple, we all like to eat. B is for ball, we bounce down the hall. So it's just infectious, you know, the rhythm of it, and to teach the children, you know, their alphabets through a rhythm.
Through a rhythm. And you know, I have to ask you this question before we got started, and you gave me a surprising answer. I ask you about, you know, when you talk about how you have 4,000 poems written and you have now 18 books out. The question is, are you able to sit down and just say, okay, I'm gonna write a poem? Or does it just happens at different time? I know most artists will say, I can't just sit down and then here comes all these poems in my head. But how does it work for Jacqueline James? How does it work for you?
You know what? I'm glad you asked me that, Kevin, because it's totally the opposite. I have to sit down and try hard not to write the poem because once I start talking, it just takes over. It's an entity that just takes control of itself, right? So if I'm stopped, when the room stops, the noise stops, I'm free to express myself through poetry. Yes.
Wow. You know, and I know in your new book, Dare to Change, you tackle many topics in there. You talk about emotions, you talk about crying, you talk about depression, you talk about good health, you talk about being persistent. You cover a lot of emotionals, a lot of different emotional topics in this book.
Well, that particular book is really, I'm passionate about Dare to Change because it was a revolution for myself as well. And a lot of times the writing for me is also a comfort food for me. It's sort of like laying on my own couch and psychoanalyzing my own thoughts because I'm daring people to read this book, even though it comes through the expression of poetry. I am poetry with purpose. So I'm daring them to embrace things that they were naturally put here for, to embrace your passion and get past all your fears and your doubts and insecurities and get past everything, all the other demands that people may put on them. Okay, so to speak, we tend to, including myself, I'm guilty of it, we tend to go through our days trying to satisfy what other people see in them, to give them the best from us because we want to please them. By nature, we're people pleasers, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes we have to learn to say no. So I'm daring you to change. I'm daring you to change into who God created you to be. And then please yourself first.
So obviously, you mentioned God. Your faith is a key part of what you have done with your poetry here.
Yes, it is. God has blessed me in such a phenomenal way, Kevin, that it's extraordinary. I'm going to tell you, it's extraordinary. It's miraculous. It's so many words and so many avenues that I have touched with just God alone. When I get rid of the noise, I can hear the voice of the Lord. Yes. And He speaks to me, and it manifests itself through a work of art, through my poetry.
Wow.
And majority of the time, to be honest, I sleep through half of these, right? I mean, 3 a.m., when he say late in the midnight hour, 3 a.m., I'm up. I'm writing.
You're right. That's when you get started. My goodness. All right, we are visiting with Jacqueline James, and she's got a new book out. It is called Dare to Change. Really special book. We want to talk a little bit more with her about that. And of course, she's got another one called Brain Power. And she's talking about using these things, these brains we have, and some of the work with that. We'll talk to her about that, some of her children's stories, and a whole lot more. This is Kevy's Corner. Jacqueline James is our guest, and she's a poet right here from St. Louis, homegrown, native St. Louis poet, our very own. We'll talk more with her right after this. And welcome back. We are talking with Jacqueline James, St. Louis poet here. New book out called Dare to Change. And Jacqueline, just want to ask you about this. What is it, the motivation? How do you get people interested, informed about the book, and wanting to go purchase your books of poems?
I'm glad you asked me that, Kevin, because I have come up with a real unique jingle. And if you don't mind, I will share it with you.
Yeah, go ahead. We like that.
So It's a woman going around spreading poems throughout the town, telling truths and stating facts, telling people about themselves. She'll write it once and read it twice. The poems I've heard are very nice. If you haven't heard her yet, you're in for a treat, and that's a fact. So I am Jacqueline James. I am a master of rhymes. If you give me a reason, I will give you a rhyme with authentic poetry every single time. So pardon me, do not settle for less when you have just met the best.
Oh my goodness! Now, see, now I gotta ask you this. After that rendition you just gave us, there's some other genres you start asking about. It makes me want to ask you about spoken word. But makes me want to ask you about rapping, because the way you were hitting off the rhythms there, those runs. I'm like, okay, we put a beat behind it. Can she, add that to the book? How does that work?
You know what? A lot of my young followers, they ask me that. They say, well, Miss Jackie or Miss James, they call me Poetess J. That's my street name, Poetess J.
Poetess J.
They say, you can put a beat behind it and it'll be a song. I say, well, you're welcome to it. But I have been, you did mention it prior to the pandemic, it's a little bit more inviting to go out. I haven't ventured down that avenue since, but I have visited different clubs and got on the mic and graced the mic, so to speak, right? And did my thing, and it was fun. It was really a fun crowd. I'm magical on that mic, by the way. I am a beast.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a good thing. That is really good. And so you talked about how you had the vision and said, "Hey, I need to do this." But for the person that might be out there right now, Jacqueline, they're thinking, and I'm sure you come across a lot of people, young people that enjoy writing poetry. As a teacher, I see it all the time. And so what is the most challenging part about getting started?
I think the most challenging part for a lot of people is the fear of acceptance. See, and poetry is more of a free spirit avenue. Once you get past of what people think or how they perceive it, then it's going to flow automatically. You cannot stop its flow.
Okay.
The thing about it, the interesting thing about it is different audience is what you want to please, right? So if you have a lot of slang or profanity in your poetry, which I find in a lot of younger artists, they're only going to run around in their same circle. But if you kind of fine tune it and give it a little sophistication and say the same thing, I teach that. I also offer a poetry workshop through the community centers and the YMCAs.
Okay.
To teach them kind of clean up their verbiage a bit.
And in your workshops, you have a wide range of ages that participate?
Yes, well, the times I've done them, they were different age groups, starting from early as first grade all the way up to the 8th graders who were in the summer campers.
And so again, I guess I ask, how do you get that started? I mean, of course, you have that gift. So like you say, you can look out here and next thing you know, you're writing a poem about the cameras and the lights and the studio.
That's exactly what
everything. I do. So is that how it works too? As a poet, you just got to you have to take a minute and reflect. I mean, you mentioned Maya Angelou, and of course I'm, another St. Louisan too. She's a homegirl.
Yes, she is.
A homegirl here, and so her history, legacy beginning here. Love all of her work as well too. And you wonder when you come up with things like you think about her like Phenomenal Woman and I Know by the Cage Bird Sings, and then I look at your poems like Crying, and then the one you had on the Mudslide, the title, and you say, well, doggone it. I mean, how does that, you just said it just comes for you. You even said it's your spiritual gift, but it's like, wow, I'm looking at your work here. How, where does it come from? And then you have a book here, Brain Power. Tell us about Brain Power.
Now, Brain Power, I'm glad you asked about that.
Yeah, you might put that.
I really appreciate Brain Power.
Let them see Brain Power.
Because Brain Power, in this particular book, I started in different sections, okay? So I didn't really do kind of like the general format. I started with different sections. First, I wanted you to think about it. So these are things that are challenging, things that we kind of go through life with sort of like tunnel vision. Like they there, but we refuse to see them or give them acknowledgement. So I bring them right in your face with my poetry. Like, you're gonna see this, it's here, it exists. And I'm gonna give it to you a little dose at a time. So I'm giving you the first chapter is to think about it.
Okay.
And then this is to recognize. Recognize it's in your family. It's not just in my family, it's in all of us. We are connected through certain avenues.
Right.
Then I go on to say, let's talk about it. Let's see if we can come up with some kind of rationale with this, whether it be a solution or just a mentor or whatever we need to rectify this to bring it to a peaceful or level of peace. Then I want you to accept it. Accept, yeah, this happened. This is why this person is tormented, or this is why this person is uneasy, or whatever it might be. I want you to accept it. And then finally, I want you to just read this and reflect, you know, and when you do some reflecting and stop, like this particular poem, shifting the blame, okay? And that's what we tend to do. We always point the finger.
Yeah.
We point the finger at each other. I have been guilty myself, Kevin.
Yeah.
But if woulda, shoulda, coulda. If this hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened, and this shouldn't have happened. But at the same time, I want you to take accountability and responsibility. See, that's why I'm poetry with purpose, to allow you to see yourself through my work.
All right. Poetry with purpose and allowing us to see your work. And again, I love the graphic there too, with the brain lifting up the weights there. I think that is really special with you doing it like that. And then also you have here too some of your covers, and very creative. You design the covers too as well?
Well, actually, so the publisher that I was working with is actually a website.
Okay.
Deposit photos.
Okay.
And when I give him the idea of what I visualize in my mind, he capture it through the photo.
Captured from there.
Yes.
That is terrific.
And I said brain power because it's giving you that power. See, once we know about something and we accept it and we find a rational solution to deal with the situation, that gives us power. You understand?
Right. And there's power in the poetry, right?
Yes, it is.
You know, gotta ask you this too. I know we're coming up on a break here in just a minute, but as we move into the political season, with the presidential election coming up, have you written any pieces for the candidates and anything?
Well, Mr. Trump has a poem in my first published book. Okay. When he got elected the first time, unfortunately.
What was the title? I was
Lead On.
Lead On. Okay.
Lead On.
Okay. Well, from that title, I think that's what we would want to happen and see that happen.
So, no, it was not in that perspective. So, that's when he got elected the first time, you know.
Okay, lead on.
Yeah. Well, we were all, sitting, trying to go over the hump. We voted together with President-elect Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
But now this piece coming out, it's not going to be released until we see the outcome of this election.
Right.
But yes, I do have something for both candidates.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, well, I tell you what, we're going to take a time out here, though, visiting with Jacqueline James, outstanding, terrific poetess right here from St. Louis. And also, she is an author of children's stories. So that and a whole lot more. And also, we'll come back, get you the information on how you can get in contact with her. It's rhymesjj.com, right? rhymesjj.com.
Correct.
rhymesjj.com. So we're going to take one final time. I'll come back and wrap things up with St. Louis poet and author Jacqueline James right here on Kevy's Corner. Welcome back to the show. Kevykev with you, Kevy's Corner. Our guest today, Jacqueline James, St. Louis poet and children's story author, children's book. She writes the children's books. She does her poetry. Got to ask you this too, Jackie, in these closing moments here. You spend a lot of time in the community. You make yourself available through your poetry to assist others. Tell everybody about what you do in the community with that.
Well, also, Kevin, I also visit day camps for seniors. And this part of my work is very important to me because poetry is a form of art that slows down the progression of dementia. So I visit a lot of day camps for seniors, and I read poetry to them, and I interact with them, and they can find themselves through my words, and I allow them to talk, listening to keep them engaged so that they won't be left alone.
And
Yes.
what's the response been like too when you meet with the seniors?
Oh, it's been awesome. It's just so rewarding because they just cheer me on when I come back. She's back. Yeah, so I have a couple of them, then I'm a regular, and I also do storytelling with some. I also do the challenging adults as well, okay?
Awesome.
And they're not always of senior age, but their mental capacity may be a little challenging, whereas their caregiver or their family member have to leave them in a day camp while they work.
Gotcha.
And I visit them, and I have a different approach with them because I use the children's stories with them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, and I do picture boards, and I tell them stories, and I really appreciate that side.
Great, fantastic. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, find about what you're doing in the community, the services that you're providing, it's rhymesjj.com. That's your website?
Yes, it is.
And you're also available on the social media too?
I am. I am on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and also I have a YouTube channel.
All right.
That's steady growing.
Hopefully, maybe you'll get us on there and let us get a couple episodes on there too.
I appreciate
That'd be great.
that. That
All
would
right.
be awesome.
Well, Jackie, I want to thank you so much for coming by today. It's been a pleasure and continued success with you. I mean, you've got some great works. I mean, 18 books, 10 of them written, you all during the pandemic. I think that's tremendous. And you started this in 2018, and you got 18 books, and from what I understand, you got over 4,000 poems.
Yes, waiting to be published. Yes.
Waiting to be published. So you are doing, as they say, you go, girl, 'cause you doing it. All right.
I appreciate that,
Thank
Kevin,
you so
and
much.
thanks
All
for
right.
having
Again,
me.
thank you. Again, the site is rhymesjj.com, rhymesjj.com, and you can get all the information about Jacqueline James and Jackie James and all the great work that she is doing with her poetry. That's going to wrap things up for us. Special thanks to everybody. Again, a big shout out to Ed Grider. Is always doing a great job with our directing and producing. And be sure to follow us, subscribe on our YouTube channel, and keep up to date with what we're doing, all right? At Kevykev Media, all right? That's going to wrap things up, and we'll talk to you next time on Kevy's Corner.